Have you been wondering what the best Nvidia driver is in terms of latency, raw performance, as well as stability? Well, in today's video, that's exactly what I compared. The 5 most recent drivers to find out which the best Nvidia driver is. So sit down, strap in, let's go. Right guys, in today's video, as the intro suggests, I'm going to be comparing the latest driver 546.29 versus the 4 previous drivers, which in my opinion have all been pretty damn good drivers, and each one just improves on the next. But I'm not going to be doing 545.84, so I'm going to be comparing against 546.17, 546.01, 545.92 and 537.58. But before I get to my results, guys, I'm just going to draw your attention to the GRD Driver Forum. There has actually been a hot fix driver update yesterday, I think it was. It's 546.31 because people have been experiencing micro stutters, especially when VSync is enabled. But with most things with the latest Nvidia drivers, you can mitigate that, and the fix is quite easy. So what you're going to need to do, you're not even going to have to worry about the hotfix driver. I don't experience any of these problems because I always do this by default. What you do is you go into Windows settings, gaming, under game bar, graphics settings, and make sure hardware accelerated GPU scheduling is enabled. So put this on, restart your computer, because this is going to facilitate hardware acceleration system-wide. But if hardware acceleration is on via Windows settings, it's going to create conflicts with apps that have hardware acceleration built into them. So make sure hardware acceleration is done system-wide via Windows settings. But then what you need to do is go into your browser, go to settings, and then look for advanced. The same concept will look different, but the same concept will apply with Google Chrome. Switch off hardware acceleration in your browser. Next, go to Discord, go to user settings, find advanced. In advanced, switch off hardware acceleration. Then you're going to go into Steam, click on Steam, go to settings, go to interface, and then enable GPU accelerated rendering, so switch this off. Enable hardware video decoding, switch this off. And then lastly, what you're going to do is if you use VLC, go to tools, go to preferences, input codecs, and hardware accelerated decoding, switch it from automatic to disable. So the reason we're doing this is because, as mentioned, via Windows settings, hardware acceleration is done system-wide. But if you have it in Windows settings, which mitigates that issue, it causes conflicts with apps that have hardware acceleration baked in. So that's why you put it on via Windows settings, so it's system-wide, switch it off everywhere else. Once you do that, like I have set by default, you won't have any of the issues like microstarting, etc. But now that we're going to get to the results, what I'm going to ask you to do, if you subscribe to the channel, please make certain that you have notifications set to all. Really will help me with the algorithm. Like the video, comment on the video, share the video. Really appreciate your support. To those of you that aren't subscribed, please consider doing so. Last week I did a full GPU optimization guide as well as a full CPU optimization guide, which is well worth your time. For the full CPU optimization guide, step 1 shows you how to unlock undervolting if you've got a 10th generation Intel processor and newer. So a definite watch. I will link this in the description as well. But let's get to those results. So guys, all my games are tested at medium settings because I do test on a GTX 1650 laptop. The newer games, however, because I do test on a GTX 1650 laptop, I put on low settings because my laptop is trash. So the new games I have to play on low. I do test on single player games because those are the games I prefer, and I don't have space to install online games at the moment, and the data is just a lot more reliable when testing on single player games. I use FSR 2.0 or 2.1 on the quality setting where available, And then lastly, as mentioned, I do test on a GTX 1650 laptop. So if you on an RTX system, you expect your results to differ from mine. I'd say anything RTX 3060 and up, you're probably going to find that your results are not comparable to mine. Anything below RTX 3060, so RTX 3050 Ti and below, your results will probably be similar to mine, probably higher, but similar relationship, etc. So guys, let's just get into it. So I'm going to start with the oldest driver, 537.58. This driver was the first driver in the 537 series or branch that had good latency. Many people still swear by this driver because of the fact that it has good latency, but it doesn't have great performance, unfortunately. When I add up all the average FPS over 12 games, I get to 782. When I add up all the 1% lows, I get to 585. And when I add up all the 0.1% lows, I get to 487. So this was a good driver a couple of Windows updates ago, probably 2 months ago. But as Windows has updated, this driver still has good latency, but the stability has gone quite a bit lower than the most recent driver. That brings us on to 45.92. When I add up all the average FPS, I get to 781. When I add up all the 1% lows, I get to 589. So you can see there's already a slight improvement there. And then when I add up all the 0.1% lows, I get to 497. So you can see the 1% lows and the 0.1% lows are really better than 537.58. Moving on to 546.01. When I add up all the average FPS, I get to 780. When I add up all the 1% lows, I get to 588. And when I add up all the 0.1% lows, I get to 492. So actually a step down from 545.92, 546.01. That brings us to the previous driver, which I was quite a big fan of. Doesn't have the best latency, but a good raw performance. When I add up all the average FPS, I get to 788. So you can see it's quite an improvement on average FPS in this driver. When I add up all the 1% lows, I get to 594. So you can see that so far this has got the best 1% lows. And when I add up all the 0.1% lows, I get to 504. So this is why for single player games, I was a big fan of this driver previously. But then Nvidia was so gracious as to drop the latest driver, 546.29. When I add up all the average FPS, I get to 793. So you can see it's got the best average FPS. When I add up all the 1% lows, I get to 602. So you can see quite a big improvement in 1% lows. So this driver is quite stable. And when I add up all the 0.1% lows, I got to 507. So and also this driver's got good latency. So it's quite a powerhouse. It's got good average FPS. It's got fantastic 1% lows. It's got fantastic 0.1% lows. And it's got good latency. So I really do recommend the latest driver. But then you have to switch on hardware acceleration in Windows settings, but switch off hardware acceleration in your browser, switch off hardware acceleration in Discord, switch off hardware acceleration in VLC, and switch off hardware acceleration in Steam. It should only be on in Windows settings. Once you have set up like that, the latest driver, 546.29, is going to blow your socks off. Because let's just compare it to the previous driver that I used to recommend for online gaming. 537.58 had great latency. 546.29 now has great latency. But 537.58, the 1% lows are 585 compared to 602. So there's quite a market jump in 1% lows. And when I compare the 0.1% lows, 507 versus 487. So you can see the 1% lows, the 0.1% lows, and the average FPS is far superior than 546.29. So guys, switch on hardware acceleration in Windows settings, switch off hardware acceleration in Steam, Discord, VLC, your browser. 546.29 is your baby. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to smash that like button. If you have any questions, please hit me up in the comment section. And as always guys, if you're still watching and you haven't subscribed as of yet, now's the time to do so. Have a good week. It's people like you. Cheers.